Bringing you the top stories from Bonners Ferry to St. Mary's and everywhere in between, this is the North Idaho Prepcast with Ryan Scaggs.
That's right. Another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast, your weekly breakdown of everything Districts 1 and 2 in the state of Idaho. Brandon Baney with Ryan Scaggs. We joked about how we've all kind of been on spring break lately, but you are actually on spring break this week, Ryan.
Yeah, we are on spring break. Got a suntan this weekend, too, of all things. So we actually had that bright, shiny thing in the sky show up for a few days until today. But yeah.
You've got a suntan and a sun at home, right? Because of
suntan and a sun at home. Yeah, lots of Lego breaks and going to the park. So it's been fun though.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you taking some time because I know your time is limited this week. So we appreciate you making the time for us here on the North Idaho Prepcast. I know the fans appreciate it as well. So thank you.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, there was a lot going on for teams up north last week. Baseball and softball went down to Boise to compete. Tennis got going, but I think the biggest story has to be on the track. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about Sammy Wood from Post Falls setting a couple of new school records in the mile and the 2 mile, and we have more North Idaho athletes breaking school records in track and field just from last week.
Yeah, and Samantha Wood continues to add on to those too. So she's not done yet. So it kind of, everything's penciled in right now. You got the Ticonderoga out that, you can't put anything in ink with her because she's still cruising. But yeah, Rusty Lee from Sandpoint broke the school record at the Bonners Ferry inviting 300 hurdles. Ran a time of 39.73. So congrats to him. That was a great event for him. And I know that his coach was saying that he had been targeting that record since last year, and he's been darn close and finally was able to get over the hump and get that time in. And as the weather warms up too, I would see that he would continue to shave some more time off of that, especially as he continues to hone his ability in that event because he's one of the best in the area. Will Hurst in that same meet also won the shot and disc for Sandpoint, so that was something of note. Dalton Wild from Post Falls though broke a 30-plus-year-old school record at Post Falls in the 100-meter dash. He ran a time of 11.03 last week in their tri meet with Lakeland and Moscow. And to kind of bring some levity to that heat, you had Wild running an 11.03. Then the second place guy ran 11.2 and 11.23, and then third place time was 11.29, which was Dylan Wolf. So those heat times are absolutely blistering fast, and that's you're missing the Lakeland guys that are all running sub 11.4 as well. So that heat alone was just crazy fast. But Dalton Wild breaking that school record that was I think 36 years old was a pretty big feat by him.
That is so awesome. Rusty Lee, his time in the 300-meter hurdles right now is the best in the state, regardless of classification.
Yeah, and that's huge. That's awesome.
Dalton. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, you find these kids are finding their niche events and just absolutely flourishing, and it's awesome to see the kids from the north being able to gain some ground per se, no pun intended, but on their competition. They're doing an awesome job, and they're going to keep adding to it.
Yeah, and for Dalton Wild in the 100, right now the top time in the state belongs to Gatlin Bear of Kimberly, which probably surprises absolutely nobody. He's already run a 1080 in the 100.
That's so crazy. Yeah, I ran not to date myself, but in high school, I was super stoked. I ran an 11.4 in the 100 in my heat, and the winner of my heat was Anthony Buchanan from University of High School in Spokane, who ran track at Washington State, but he had a winning time of 10.57. So I thought I did really well, and there was 4 guys in that heat that all went sub 11, and I was like 9th in that heat and at 11.4, and I'm like, I was super stoked, and I saw everybody. I'm like, whoa, there's a lot of people in front of me.
That's crazy. Yeah. For Dalton Wild, his 100 time right now, it is third best in 5A. Mason Lawyer of Boise has run a 1089, and Jacob Webster of Centennial has run a 1098. I would say that they've had much more favorable weather down in the Boise area than up north. And I would expect that to be a pretty competitive event when we get to state.
Yeah,
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Going to be fun to see because you got some absolute speedsters, and you look at other guys. That 4x1 team of Post Falls is really good too. When you throw in Dylan Wolf on that team as well, there's some guys that they're going to be able to shave some significant time off of their event. So it'll be interesting to see what Post Falls can do in the sprint events, and Coeur d'Alene on the girls' side too. Just one time of note, Maricela Nelson of Coeur d'Alene ran the 100 at 12.96, and she's just a freshman. So another quick time out there. Emily Collins of Lewiston ran the 400 at 57.96, and Zoe Kissinger of Lewiston threw the disc at 114.3, all PRs for those individuals. So pretty cool to see things as the temperature rises here in North Idaho and the weather becomes more favorable. We're seeing those times continue to tick down, which is great.
Yeah, we talked about the statewide leaders, Rusty Lee leading the entire state in the 300 hurdles. Other boys from up north, both of Post Falls relays, the 4x1 and the 4x2, have the best times in the state right now. And you mentioned that 4x1 for Post Falls, Caleb Streeter, Dylan Wolf, Sheldon Pine, and then Dalton Wild, the anchor. And then the 4x2 relay is Sheldon Pine, Dalton Wild, Dylan Wolf, and then Chase Berg on anchor. He's pretty
Chase
awesome.
Berg is the unsung guy because he's a jumper too, and he's been tearing it up. He went 43.2.5 in the triple jump this week, and Caleb Skinner of Moscow threw out a jump of 43.9. So there's some guys out there that are absolutely just ripping up. But Chase Berg's another guy to keep an eye on. A lot of people forget because he does a couple field events. He doesn't do as many of the sprint events, and so he kind of sneaks in there, and he's just as fast as any of the other guys.
Yeah, so both of Post Falls' short relay teams have the best times in the state right now. And then also on the boys' side, Thor Kessinger of Lewiston has the best discus throw, 155.8, which is pretty awesome as well. You talked about on the girls' side from Lewiston, Emily Collins, her 400 time of 57.96 is the best in the state, and her 200 time of 25.97 is also the best time in the state right now. Yeah. And then Samantha Wood has the best times in the 8, 16 and 3200 for Post Falls. She's just dominating those distance races.
Yeah, it's crazy to see what she's doing. And you talk about dominance, and I know that the North Idaho Hall of Fame Sports Awards were being, the nominations are coming out there, and what Samantha's doing, in my mind, it should be of pretty substantial note. Just the sheer dominance that's going on there. With what she's doing, there needs to be a little bit. I know she's getting some more recognition I've seen on Twitter, but what she's doing is pretty crazy. And we haven't seen an athlete, I think, of this at the high school level have this level of dominance in a while.
Yeah, it's been really fun to watch. And then the last state leader from up north is Lewiston's 4x400 meter relay. Emily Collins runs the anchor leg on that, but she's joined by Rayleigh Beeler, Annika Uren, and Damaris Stuffle. So
yeah, that team's quick. That Lewiston girls team's super fast in that 4x4. And then we saw another one. Jack Kluwer of Coeur d'Alene improved his high jump to 6'1" over the weekend. So we're seeing some of these heights come up. I know that, we're looking at pole vaults too out there, that there's a few guys that are sniffing around the 13.5 to 14 foot mark. So, we're getting better times and better measurements in given events. So it'll be cool to see. I mean, as the season goes, we're still early in the year. I mean, we haven't left the month of March yet. So we hit April and early May. It's going to be cool to see what happens as we approach state.
Definitely, and we'll keep an eye on those track and field athletes as the season goes along. Let's switch to baseball, where, in the early going up in the 5A IEL, Lewiston and Coeur d'Alene look like the two best teams. Lewiston off to a 7-1 start. They're 2-0 in the conference with a sweep of Coeur d'Alene last Saturday, or actually 2 Saturdays ago.
Yeah.
They are ranked in the coaches poll this week, but Coeur d'Alene, despite that 0-2 start, they're quietly 5-3, and I think they turned some heads last week.
Yeah, I mean, they went 4-0 down in Boise and getting a big win over Rocky Mountain in Madison, where Ryan Schneider in that win struck out 13, tossing only one hitter against Rocky Mountain, which is a really good hitting team. So the Vikings are getting hot, and especially if their bullpens, their arms are able toss some one hitters out there and fan 13 in a ball game against another pretty solid 5A opponent. That's going to bode well as they approach the postseason. Because the downside, we saw it last year too, is how they sneak in finishing third in the league, and they sneak in and get the regional bid to state. Did the Vikings, where Post Falls and Lewiston finished ahead of them and didn't go to state. The same thing could happen this year. I mean, Post Falls is loaded too. You've got some studs in their lineup, and Coeur d'Alene obviously has a couple guys out there. Schneider, obviously the commit to Belmont. It's going to be interesting to see what the Vikings can do, but I still like the Bengals too. That's a team that's a stacked of a bunch of those kids that went to the Little League. I think the regional playoff down at San Bernardino and finished in a runner-up role. So there's a bunch of those kids that are on the team. I know Coeur d'Alene's got a few that went to the Little League World Series the Little League regional playoff too. So, it's going to be interesting to see between the Vikings and the Bengals who's going to kind of run the mantle there. But don't be surprised if you see Post Falls come out of the blocks late and make a run at things.
Yeah, and it's hard to get a read on Post Falls right now just because they haven't played as many games as everybody else. They were supposed to play Moscow in a conference doubleheader that got wiped out. The baseball schedules this year are really stacked for those 4A teams where they get to host all the 5A schools in that combined Inland Empire League as conference doubleheaders. So like you look at Lakeland's baseball schedule, it's like 95% of it is home games because they get to host all these, I think they go on the road like twice or something like that. So these 5As are probably like, we don't really want to travel to these 4A schools, but we'll do it, I guess.
Yeah, they're going to get to know their bus driver pretty well this year.
Yeah, no doubt. So, yeah, Post Falls got their doubleheader at Moscow wiped out. So they just haven't played as many games. And, boy, Coeur d'Alene, Coach Eric Carnes is so underrated, I think. He generally, at least from what I've observed, has the ability to really improve his team as the season goes along. Players that are B's and C's at the season start are A and B players by the end of the season. So
absolutely. And you look at the 4As this year too. I mean, Moscow was right in the midst of being competitive last year in the 5A 4A combined. I see Moscow being right there again. I think that lineup they added some players. There's a freshman player to keep an eye on, not just because I'm related to him, but Wyatt Hardig. He's a freshman pitcher. He also plays in the infield. He can play some outfield too, but he can rake. He can hit too, and does a great job for the Bears. And so it'll be interesting to see that what Moscow's able to put together at the 4A ranks. I think they can make a run at some hardware at state. It'll be interesting to see. I think that they're my favorite right now coming out of the IEL on the 4A side. Sandpoint had it, and I wanted to share this stat because it was pretty interesting. Jack Zimmerman yesterday, Sandpoint swept Bonners Ferry 9-2 and 6-5. In the second game of the doubleheader, Jack Zimmerman, in the bottom of the fifth inning, singled. He proceeded to steal second, steal third, and stole home.
All in one trip around the bases or separate?
All in one trip around, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Granted, he got home on a passed ball, but still the fact that he's able to do that on the base running was pretty impressive from Jack Zimmerman from Sandpoint. So that was a pretty cool stat that I saw that popped out as I was reading through things and saw that you don't see that every day where you get a single and you get a trip around the bases just based on your own will.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's Jackie Robinson type stuff there.
Yes.
That's crazy. Well, we had a lot of softball action from this past week as well. We had more so for like the 3A, 2A programs up north. Yeah. And, St. Mary's, I said in the preseason, and I wrote that huge softball preview for our site, IdahoSports.com, which, by the way, all of our spring sports previews are still up there: baseball, softball, tennis, track, and lacrosse. But I said for St. Mary's, they're very underrated. They've got, I think, one of, if not the best pitchers in the entire 2A classification in Tacey Watkins. They got to state last year, and what was their reward for winning the district? They had to play Malad, the eventual state champs, right away in the first round. And from there, they rallied all the way back to finish in fourth place. So I really think St. Mary's is a team that's got a lot of potential this year.
Well, yeah, and as it stands right now, the Lumberjacks softball team is outscoring their football program. Um, they put up scores. They swept Bonners Ferry over the weekend, 32-3 and 39-6. Just, I mean, ridiculous scores that you see coming out. And Tacey Watkins, who you mentioned, she fanned 13 in a one-hitter in the first game. Then proceeded in both the games to go 8 for 11 with a home run, 9 RBIs, and 10 runs scored between the two games. I mean, yeah, good golly, that's a crazy, gaudy stat line that just like is unbelievable that you see. And I don't care who you're playing, like to be able to pull those numbers is crazy. And so yeah, St. Mary's right now, they're my favorite of the 2A ranks that coming out of the North. We'll see if they can. And I don't know what Malad's like again this year, but I know there's some other competitive teams down there on the Snake River Plain that they'll make a run. But that St. Mary's softball team, they're hungry and they're putting up runs at an absolutely breakneck pace.
Yeah, I'd put St. Mary's up there with anybody, no doubt about it.
Offensively, they can absolutely rake with anyone.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Malad lost quite a bit to graduation, and I think maybe West Jefferson, maybe from District 6, looks pretty strong early on. But anyways, we can talk about that further down the road. I did want to mention, Bonners Ferry. You look at those scores and you go, oh man, like Bonners Ferry must be struggling. Like Bonners Ferry is a good 3A program. I think that just speaks to how dominant St. Mary's could be this year. Bonners Ferry has a second-year coach, Cassie Skeen, and she is like young. She played for Bonners Ferry and won a state title in 2017. So what was that, 5 years ago? So she is a very young coach, took over her alma mater last year and is bringing that competitive nature back to Bonners Ferry. So she's got the experience of winning a state title as a player, trying to do the same as a coach. And of course, Timberlake is the big team in 3A that you have to knock off up there. But Bonners Ferry is trending in the right direction as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, and like you said, I mean, beating a team that still has the pedigree that Bonners Ferry does of having a state championship within the last, 5 years. And then you walk in the doors of 2A and absolutely blow the doors off of them. Screams that this St. Mary's team is built a little bit different, which is cool to see.
Definitely. And then before we get out of here too, we did want to touch on just a little bit of tennis action. We had kind of our first big, to me, the first big duel of the season between Sandpoint and Moscow.
Yeah, Sandpoint walked into that match and they actually they were without one of their players, and so they tweaked the lineup a little bit and moved their number one singles player into the number one doubles team. And the duo ended up getting a really nice victory. Sandpoint ended up winning the duel actually 9-3 overall, but they only dropped the number one boys singles match, and then they dropped the two mixed doubles matches, and that was their only losses in the duel. So pretty dominating statement from Sandpoint Tennis Club, because they're a good team anyways, but Moscow's no slouch either up north. Both coaches do a great job, and so it'll be interesting to see. Sandpoint takes on Lakeland here in a couple weeks, and you start. They played Post Falls really tough too, and got a win there in a close duel, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens. This 5A 4A schedule kind of moving on, and then you get the Inland Empire tournament that happens up here. There's like 52 schools present, and seeing if Sandpoint can get a couple medalists out there would be pretty neat.
Yeah, Sandpoint to me is still the favorite up there. Last year when we were doing the IdahoSports.com Prepcast, before we had it regionalized, I just 1 week had Sandpoint tennis coach Ken Anderson on to talk about.
He's such a nice guy. Oh,
he is. Nice guy. He's awesome. And he told me that, hey, we juggled the lineup a lot during the regular season. A kid that's playing singles 1 week might be playing mixed doubles the next week. We're constantly moving guys and gals around until we find the right place for them. So that doesn't surprise me to hear that they shuffled the lineup around a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's a chef. He kind of like adds a little bit of this, kind of tries to find the right seasoning, and ends up getting it to work out. Which is, Kent's a great guy. It's funny because I mean, I coached at Lakeland. It was like, Sandpoint was so good you wanted to not like him, but he was such a likable person. It was so hard to like get mad when they beat you because he's such a nice guy. But yeah, no, he's doing a great job with that program, and he consistently has them, at the top here in North Idaho along with, the likes of Lewiston. And, it'll be interesting to see how they can, if they can finally break the hump and bring home some hardware from state this year. It'll be interesting because I know he's got a deep lineup. He's got a lot of youth on that team that he's been coaching for a long time. They're starting to show up in the program, and we'll see if they can make a run. But just as young as they are, but they're talented. That's the scary part about this team, is they're going to be good for the next 2, 3, 4 years.
For sure. And if you want to watch or listen to that interview that I did with Kent Anderson last spring, just type in Kent Anderson Sandpoint tennis into Google, and it's like the second result that pops up. It's the YouTube video of the interview we did with him. So had a lot of fun doing that. So yeah, hey, things are really starting to pick up. I don't know that there's going to be much to talk about next week, Ryan, because all of the schools up north are on spring break and nobody is competing in like anything across the board. So
yeah, I saw pretty much half the baseball team at the park yesterday. So I went to like Lake City and played some tennis with my kid the other day, and there was like 3 kids, hitting BP, and that was about it, shagging their own balls. So it was, yeah, there's not a lot going on here this week.
So here's my thought, and we didn't discuss this at all before we started recording. So this is a real-time production discussion. You guys are getting a behind-the-scenes look. You've been asking me for a couple of weeks now, Ryan. Hey, can we talk about this state basketball issue of trying to get more teams to state and more representation and expanding the playoffs? And I said, yeah, off season. I keep pushing it off. Well, next week, with nothing going on in terms, like literally nothing in terms of spring sports, this might be the perfect time to talk about that.
And I'm not a huge advocate for adding more. I don't want to give away my argument, but yeah, no, I'm going to go outside the box. And so I'm looking forward to having that conversation, because I'm not going to spoil too much. But yeah, do I think there needs to be changes? Yeah, absolutely. But do I think that it needs to be expanding the tournament to 16 teams? No. There's some easy fixes that we can do to try to address some of the issues, even with just keeping the numbers at 8. That I think that there's a way of going about that in the right way. But the state needs to take a look at a few things to level the playing field, which I'm looking forward to having that conversation.
I was reminded of this when I saw on social media someone who is very passionate about expanding the playoffs on Twitter sent out a tweet saying, hey, look, North Carolina and Duke, 2 teams from the same conference in the Final Four. Let's expand those playoffs so we could get the same thing at state. And that's what made me think of it. But that was like,
no, and I responded to that too. And I was like, those 2 are not like, how are you 2 blue bloods and you're surprised they're in the Elite 8? Like, come on. Like, they're not the same.
Well, and not to get too deep into the weeds here, but I mean, they're coming from a 15-team conference, and this particular person is at a school that's in a 3-team conference. So
yes.
A little different for
There's
sure.
an easy fix, and it's something that, and I don't want to mirror after other states, but I always bring in the argument because I did coach in the state of Washington. There's a few things that they changed that they did that I think Idaho could pick up, especially because you don't have the number of teams in the conference. Like, the conferences don't have 10 teams. So what you can do is, that it's an argument I'll have next week. But
yeah, for sure. And one last thing, and then I saw a tweet from this same guy after talking about Carolina and Duke that said, like, good riddance, St. Peter's. And I was like, whoa,
that's like proof that your argument would work. If any of the teams prove anything, St. Peter's would have been the one to stand behind. But okay, whatever.
Well, and like, how can you say that? That was like by far the best story.
That's the best run of any double-digit seed ever. Like, you look at who they beat and their RPI and everything that was involved. That was the most improbable run we might have seen in the tournament, maybe ever. I don't know, but I mean, at least top 3.
Good riddance. Maybe he's a Kentucky fan. I don't know. Anyways,
sour grapes.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Bitter,
we will
bitter biscuits. Yeah.
Bitter biscuits. That's right. We will have our state basketball think tank next week because everybody will be on spring break for spring sports. And then in 2 weeks, we'll get back into the spring sports flow. But I'm excited for our talk next week, Ryan. I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
I don't think it's just basketball, because I think it'll go across, I think, all sports. It'll approach football and volleyball especially too. So yeah, it's not just basketball, but that's where we see the hugest argument. But I think it helps even spring sports too. So it's an argument worth having.
All right. Well, we'll table the discussion for next week.
Perfect.
Until then, enjoy spring break up north, everybody, and enjoy the weather. Don't forget to put on your sunscreen. I made that mistake last week. It's just finally going away. It's hard to tell in the lighting, but like one half of my face got sunburned, and so
nice.
I
got like the nice little raccoon lines going already. So
yeah, for sure. So all right. Well, for Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney, and we'll see you next time on the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.